Hi, everyone. Welcome to Clearing the View, an investor series from AtlasClear Holdings, trading on the New York Stock Exchange American under the ticker ATCH. Today, I'm joined by Executive Chairman John Shibley and President Craig Ridenhour. Welcome, gentlemen.
Hi,
Good
Anna.
afternoon, Anna.
All right, well, let's start with some recent momentum. You just announced a third and fourth correspondent client. So, John, what does this mean for shareholders?
Well, I think the shareholders should hopefully appreciate that the announcements of the additional customers reflect the changes that we talked about, how we had to restructure the technology, how we're building something for scale. And so we've added these two and announced these two in relatively quick fashion from the announcement that we onboarded finally Dawson James and got everything aligned. So now going forward, as we add customers, the timeline to do so is appropriate, 45 to 60 days, depending on the customer mix. We're really now in a position to scale.
Perfect. And building on that, Craig, how does this model scale for Atlas Clear as you look ahead?
Well, we think it scales exceptionally well, Anna. We have a fixed cost structure. Now we're going to add some additional high-level staff where needed to meet our demand and need. Our pipeline is growing quite a bit, and then that's the pipeline for introducing broker-dealers who want to clear through us. But it really, over the period of the next 6, 12, 18 months, I think the street will begin to appreciate what it really means when we say we're going to onboard a correspondent clearing client. They really don't have a reference right now unless you're actively involved in the industry. And what we think they'll see is how it increases almost, I won't say exponentially, but at a rapid rate as we add more correspondents, because again, we have somewhat of a fixed cost structure. So it's a big deal for us to bring these on board. We have a big pipeline, we have a growing need, and we're really excited about the future, and we're expanding our platform. So we think it's bright.
Lots of momentum here. Craig, you also recently filed for a Federal Reserve Bank acquisition. So walk us through that process and tell us what shareholders should expect moving forward.
Well, this is a big event. I mean, this is a big happening for us. First and foremost, we need to thank our partners at Commercial Bancorp. They have been patient over the last several years as we cleaned up the balance sheet, as we did a number of things at the holding company level that we had to do to get into a position to then move forward with a potential acquisition. So what it looks like scope-wise right now is we filed with the Federal Reserve a formal application. We've also filed one with the state of Wyoming. They will review our application. A number of things that go into it, as you imagine. It's very difficult to secure a Federal Reserve member bank. And then there'll be a question and answer process back and forth as they get comfortable with us. Ultimately, down the course of that process, we believe it'll lead, hopefully, to an approval. We're optimistic. Provided we receive that approval, then the world sort of opens for us. We'll be able to work synergistically with Wilson Davis. We'll increase the capital base at the bank. We'll increase the deposit capture at the bank, and we'll also increase potential lending opportunities at the bank and create this ecosystem that's, a one-stop solution, we think, for our client base. So we're very excited about the potential approval of the Fed member bank. And, it's a process, but we're optimistic we'll be successful.
Perfect. Well, best of luck on that.
Thank you.
More on the broader market. So, the New York Stock Exchange previously proposed raising the minimum stock price threshold from 10 cents to 25 cents. So, we're now seeing the SEC consider denying that. John, what's your perspective, and how could it possibly impact Atlas Clear?
Well, obviously, we're trading, I don't know, today 23, 24 cents. And so we're under the threshold. And so it's a risk to us, a very real risk. We very much want to stay on NYSE Amex. We think we deserve to be there. We're certainly a very liquid stock and we're on time with everything. So when the rules were put forward as a proposal, we were concerned about it. We have strategies to address it. But, the most blunt force answer, of course, is another reverse, which we don't want to do. It doesn't benefit. I mean, I know that from a ratio of perspective, it's considered to be the same thing, but in reality, it's not. Fortunately for us, if one looks at the rules that were put forward, I don't think the SEC can approve them. And I don't think the SEC can approve them because the way NYSE Amex structured the rules, very the very purpose of the exchange is to create an environment where you cannot help facilitate manipulation of share price. This particular rule puts forward a 25 cent, if you hit there, you're done. but also gives the exchange this authority that's very vague, where if you have a precipitous drop, undefined and totally vague, then they can still execute the termination of the listing, even if it's above 25 cents with no cure period. And if you wrap your head around that and think about it, if you're someone who makes money from shorting, then if you have an ultimate death price with no cure period, there's a lot of incentive to invoke strategies, naked shorting, Hindenburg-esque research at the wrong moment, all of this kind of thing that can happen and really feed manipulation, which I know the exchange doesn't want, and I know the SEC doesn't want. And so I think one of the reasons that the SEC is considering denying the rule and putting forward the procedures to do so is our first comment piece that reflected this, that this would make the New York Stock Exchange Amex the most draconian exchange in the world with respect to listing and delisting, and it also does not really fairly represent what could be happening. Any price that an exchange issuer is trading at could be affected by nefarious motives, and the benefit or the attack vectors of people that would benefit from shorting it are they're so clear, and we've never seen a situation like this. And so we've put forward another comment letter. I do believe ultimately the SEC will agree that the way the rule is written today really shouldn't be approved. And that's why I think they've started the procedures to deny it. And I do believe it will be denied. If it's not, we have a lot of really good things where we hope our share price will be above the threshold by an adequate and safe margin. But if it's not, then we have the last resort, which would be another reverse, which we really don't want to do.
Well, we certainly will be following along with this story and see what they decide to do. But as always, thank you, John, and thank you, Craig, for this
Okay.
conversation. Thank you for your transparency and all these great updates with AtlasClear. We look forward to following the company's continued progress.
Thank you, Anna.
Thank you, Anna.
All right. Thank you all for watching.